Hi, I'm Jeff Richards. Welcome to Japan Today Spotlight. April 2nd is what U.S. President Donald Trump is calling Liberation Day. What's he liberating? That's not so clear. But what is clear is that a 25% tariff on all imported cars and parts has just gone into effect. And Japan's auto industry is squarely in the crosshairs. Despite Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba's efforts, including a summit with Trump back in February, Japan did not get a free pass. And not just Japan. The tariffs are sparking a global outcry. Canada, Mexico, the EU, and Britain are left shaking their collective heads. Even the U.S. auto industry itself has been stunned by the tariffs that are meant to save it. It's the usual Trump playbook. Headline first, details later. But for Japan, there's a lot at stake. In this week's edition of Japan Today Spotlight, we look at what's driving Trump's decision, how it could impact prices, and what it means for Japan's biggest industry. Trump made the announcement on March 26th, saying the tariffs are meant to protect American jobs and wealth, and to push foreign automakers to shift production to the United States. Trump said, and I quote, "We're going to charge countries for doing business in our country and taking our jobs, taking our wealth, taking a lot of things. They've taken so much out of our country, friend and foe alike, and frankly, friend has often been much worse than foe." The tariffs cover imported passenger vehicles, light trucks, and key components like engines and transmissions. Last year, the U.S. imported nearly 8 million vehicles, worth $244 billion, plus another $197 billion in parts. Japan, along with Mexico and South Korea, was a top source. Trump points to a new $5.8 billion Hyundai plant in Louisiana as proof his approach is working. Industry experts say prices are going to rise, and fast. If car makers pass the full cost on to consumers, the average vehicle price in the United States could jump by $12,500. That's not just sticker shock. It's a shift in who can even afford a new car. And let's be honest, will that really drive people to buy American? Or will it convince them to seek out cheaper alternatives? That's a hit not only to car buyers, but also potentially to the broader economy, feeding into overall inflation, something that consumers worldwide are doing their best to deal with right at the moment. Trump's team says the tariffs will bring an end to what they call a ridiculous supply chain that stretches across borders. But in reality, auto manufacturing is global, and it will take years to design, build, retool, and open the new factories in the U.S. that Trump is promising. Trump is doing this to benefit U.S. automakers, which sell about 50% of all vehicles in the United States. You might think Detroit's Big Three would be celebrating, but instead, they too are stunned. The 25% tariff doesn't just apply to finished cars. It also covers parts. And, as we mentioned earlier, the modern auto industry relies on deeply interconnected supply chains, with parts crossing borders multiple times before final assembly. Now, automakers are being told to determine which components are US made and which are not, or face even more penalties for incorrect allocations. And this is not like tracking where your avocado came from or in what country your toothpaste was produced. The supply chain for cars is unbelievably complex, and expecting quick clarity seems optimistic at best. The logistics alone are a nightmare, and enforcement? Still unclear. The day after Trump's announcement, Tokyo officially requested an exemption. Japan's chief cabinet secretary, Yoshimasa Hayashi, reminded Washington that Japanese automakers have invested over $61 billion in the U.S. and created 2.3 million jobs. Even more vexed was Prime Minister Ishiba. Speaking in the Diet, he said Trump's view of allies and trade is difficult to understand. He acknowledged the impact could be significant, but stressed the need for diplomacy, not confrontation. He's keeping all options on the table, though what those options are remains to be seen. Ishiba's not wrong here. Trump's worldview mixes loyalty with leverage, the carrot and stick approach. However, Japan doesn't seem to be cashing in on its decades of alliance building with the U.S., and Ishiba himself doesn't seem to be that charming. I don't think he has any kind of rapport with Trump, and indeed may not even make it past the July elections. This is probably something that Trump and his team are waiting on. How will this affect Japanese automakers? Japan's auto industry is huge. It employs over 5.5 million people and makes up 8.3% of the country's total workforce. This, according to the Japan Automobile Manufacturers Association. Nearly 30% of Japan's exports to the U.S. were vehicles in 2024, accounting for 21.3 trillion yen. The auto industry makes up nearly 3% of Japan's gross domestic product and has been a major driver of recent wage hikes here, as automakers distribute the huge profits they reap overseas to their employees. One economist at Nomura Research Institute predicts that the 25% tariffs will shrink Japan's economy by around 0.2%. Why? Reduced export volumes, job losses, and potential production shifts. Can Japanese automakers adapt? Well, Japan's auto industry has been expecting the tariffs since Trump got reelected. Toyota said it would try to cut costs before simply passing on the amount of the tariffs to consumers in the U.S. by raising prices. Mazda, which sold about 420,000 cars in the U.S. in 2024, but only 20% of the vehicles were manufactured there. It says one option is to ramp up production at the plant it jointly operates with Toyota in Alabama. Japanese car makers already operate 24 plants in the United States, but even those could be hit if they rely on imported parts. Some companies have already been stockpiling, shipping cars from Mexico to the U.S. in advance of the April 2nd deadline. But beyond short-term tactics, there's not much they can do. This may just be the start of a much longer trade war, and Japanese automakers are bracing for a bumpy ride. And what about you? Do you think these on-again, off-again, up and down tariffs are ultimately just posturing from the Trump administration, a tactic to get other concessions? Or is this sizing up to reshape global trade for real? Personally, I think Japan's automakers will adapt. They always do. Japan Incorporated is all about the Benjamins, the Shibusawas, and they'll do whatever they can to keep the cash rolling in and pass the expenses further down the production line. It's the unpredictability that's really rattling the boardrooms right now. Let us know in the comments. And from the Japan Today newsroom here in Tokyo, I'm Jeff Richards. See you next time.